next up, we turn our attention to Rugby Europe, where the competition is heating up as well. It's also through 2 rounds, same as the Six Nations. We've had week 2, we've had some spills, some thrills. The last round in particular was awesome, high-scoring affair. 224 points total scored between the 3 games of the weekend, which is just great stuff, and not normally what you would have associated with some Rugby Europe clashes over the last 5 years and 10 years. So the competition is improving. It started with Spain managing to survive a bit of a scare out in Sochi in Russia, where they certainly their discipline was letting them down at times, and then the Russians were coming at them, but they managed to just dig that one out narrowly. And then it was followed up by the Georgians taking out some of their frustration at the round 1 draw, the unprecedented draw against the rather hapless and hopelessly overmatched Oranges of the Netherlands, just getting pumped. I think it was 72 was what they racked up in that particular contest to the 10 of the Dutch. And then it was the main event was the last one again, Romania versus Portugal out in Bucharest. Awesome high-flying Portugal, a tale of 2 halves. Portugal scored some lovely scores, but an assured second half performance and a very physical second half performance from the Oaks managed to get it done, and in good style as well. So it's teed everything up quite nicely. Now Romania are nearly at that second spot. They can almost taste it in terms of automatic qualification, and they're also in a great spot in terms of sitting pretty in the tournament, and they'll have a grudge match against the Georgians to perhaps win the Rugby Europe title now as well. It's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to overstate how quickly this tournament has changed.
Yeah.
This was like, you say 224 points scored in 3 games of rugby.
Yeah.
5 of the 6 teams scored more than 27 points, or at least 27 points.
Yeah.
Only the Dutch didn't. Everybody else.
And they scored 10.
And they scored 10. It was, this competition is utterly transformed. It is offense. And while some of these teams have a little bit of work to do defensively, and just in terms of tightening things up in terms of how they concede scores, particularly around the defensive maul, I am so encouraged by what they're doing, because we know that they have, at least the teams at the upper echelon of this competition, have the capacity to mix it physically with some of these tier 1 sides for periods of games. And the fact that they're putting points on the board now with such consistency
that they can go into some of those World Cup pool games and hope to grab a score or 2 against some top tier opposition now.
It has comfortably become the most exciting tier 2 competition, which you couldn't always say for it. I mean, Georgia were winning Grand Slams, and everybody else was kind of floundering behind. Romania were probably the only other side that can mix it physically. But with Portugal and Spain coming on leaps and bounds,
Russia being game in all their fights now as well.
Absolutely, like it's just totally compelling, and you're seeing all of these sides really going about it the right way for them. And it's been fascinating, and it was another great weekend's viewing, and I really did enjoy it. We'll dig into the games themselves now. We're going to start out in Sochi in Russia, where the Bears came just up short with their pretty much their last chance saloon game here against the Spanish. They hustled as hard as they could, but they ended up losing the game at 37 to 41 to a very good Spanish side with some real talent in terms of the speed that they move with.
Rue and Ordas moving things nicely, some dangerous runners out wide, and they scored 41 points away from home is always a good tally, and it was what was needed, because there were some helter-skelter moments. They're still not the finished article, this Spanish team, and there are some old habits that are dying hard, particularly disciplinary ones, but in terms of how they managed to dig it out against such adversity out there and away from home, very impressive, and they're worthy of their position now after the opening 2 rounds. They've played them perfectly.
Yeah, I mean,
perfect-ish.
I still have a hard time placing this Spanish side, because in moments, like I'm almost thinking they're kind of like a French side from maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where like in moments they're absolutely fabulous, and you wonder why they aren't winning this competition. And they are, like, at the moment they are winning this competition, but they put together dazzling sequences. They got wonderful halfbacks. Jimeno at 12 as well just cuts a clean line.
He does
pretty consistently. And they move the ball very, very excitingly. They've got skill. They got skill all over the park, and on the wings as well. They've got electricity. Their forward pack rumbles really ably at the maul, and so you're thinking like they blast their way to a 15 points to 3 lead, and you're thinking these guys have way too much in it for the Russians. But then, like in little bursts, they go asleep.
Yes.
Like some of the tries that they conceded in this game, like Davidov's run from the centre, like they just stopped defending. Defending. They just didn't get out of the line, looked a little gassed. And then when they get gassed, they make mistakes and they fall off tackles and they don't bring any line speed, and then they concede cards.
Yes.
And that was kind of what happened for bits of this game. I mean, like, it was very impressive the way they dug it out, but they should never have been in that position.
They looked a superior team in pretty much every facet of it, apart from, you know, the top 2 inches of temperament. Like guys like Gaisan for Russia still very important and pivotal in getting them moving, and credit to them, they are outmatched a lot of the time, and just in terms of both speed and skill set, and they are a bit more game and have a bit more of that clutch that maybe Spain are looking to tap into if they're going to kind of complete their campaign or their run for the World Cup. But it does tee things up very in a very exciting fashion, and just such a high scoring game. I never would have thought. You look, a few years ago, Russia v Spain out in Russia. Like 41-37 in February. Jeez.
And the quality of the pitch is great as well. They had that lovely clean surface.
Helps a lot.
It did it massively, and it definitely facilitated good footy. First of all, I think you have to give a massive amount of credit to the hat-trick hero Minguion. What a second try that was. What an effort.
That was try of the game. They're absolutely stellar running.
How many players down that left-hand side? There's a question about the finish. I'm not
a
million percent sure. I don't think they had the angle to show you.
That was the issue, but it was controversial. I know Tier 2 Rugby were posting and tweeting about it. It was a little one, the freeze frame of like, is he out? Is he not out? But you know,
it's just a heck of an effort.
Sometimes when you're in one of those high-scoring shootout games, I'm just err on the side of try. Try's good. Try's good. Let's move on. Score more tries, and they did. They went and scored a load of tries in this game, and it was a ding-dong, humdinger of a battle. And the grit of the Russians does kind of impress me every time I see it, because they in sequences, like you're saying about Spain being good, in sequences they're all over the place and blown away, and just not able to live.
Too slow.
Not able to live with anything that's happening around them, and yet they're gritty in a kind of an intangible way, and they
settle down. They settle into games, and then when the play slows down and they're able to manage their way down the pitch, they can be very competent. I like Davidov at 12. By the way, he's not winger speed anymore, but he was doing good things in there. But I also think like Dick Muir has them organised, and it was do or die for them. And I think that was the dynamic that you saw, was they were blown away by Spain, and they all knew that they had to win this game, and so even when they were 12 points down, they stayed very patient and stayed in the game and knew that they had to go find scores, and they did. And Spain, meanwhile, were just a little, flappy and a little probably flaky is probably the word, just like up and down, great, and then falling asleep in moments, and they let them back in. But what I will say is that last sequence, when the Russians stole the lead with 5 minutes to go, Spain showed great maturity to go down the field and get the winning score.
Back to their skill set to do it as well. They didn't panic. They went through the phases. So you can see their class in moments, but also a few of their kind of shortcomings revealed in this game. But credit to the visitors. It's a tough enough task to go away from home and get a win, and they did it so in good style out there. And they sit atop the table after 2 rounds now, and they're in a great spot to try and they're in 3rd overall in terms of the race for that repechage as well. So they're in very good shape. Obviously, it is the easier part of their round. Their tougher tests kind of come in the back end of the schedules, but they've done their jobs A1 to so far, the only doubt is maybe they had, like, if that player was ineligible last week, that could be come back to haunt them. But apart from that, they're in perfect position.
Thankfully, that noise is still down. They didn't get the bonus point. Sure, they didn't for this, because it's not a 4-try bonus point. It's a 3-try.
Is that true? I think on from Rugby Europe's one it says it's a 4-try bonus point rule, but I don't know if they did.
Portugal didn't get one for their loss, so I don't think so. But,
okay,
so they did just get the 9 points from the opening 2 games, but it was like winning is everything in this competition, especially with the World Cup around the corner. They've seen off that tricky challenge away from home, and now they get a week off and they get to prepare themselves for what is a
block 2, the big one.
A fantastic finale for them of games against the likes of Georgia and Romania and Portugal, which will be all important and all decisive.
Teams up a big Iberian grudge match that could yet decide who goes to the repechage or no. It's it's good colour, and congratulations to Spain
and the right result.
Absolutely, commiserations to Russia as well, but it is the right result.
Russia's problem was that they stuck with Lynn Jones for the beginning of this this campaign when he was evidently mentally checked
one
out.
foot out the door.
They gave him a lot of credit for their showing at the World Cup, but I mean, he didn't meritocratically qualify for it the last time either. So I think Dick Muir is a good appointment. I like what I've heard from him. I've liked what I've seen on the pitch since he's come in.
Looking a little too soon in terms of
the other sides have progressed beyond them, and they're just personnel wise a little slow. But I suspect they'll be back strong. But I think for now, we can RIP Russia.
I think so. I think they might be the first of those to go, along with the Netherlands, obviously, who were never really in the running. But I think Russia now, their campaign might be scuppered by that particular one. But Spain's is high flying, so congratulations to Los Leones for getting that W and sitting atop the table after the opening 2 rounds.
Absolutely.
And that's going to irritate the stars of the second game as well, because we pivot over to Amsterdam, where the Georgians had some kind of physical therapy, some group therapy to go through after an unprecedented home draw against a high-flying Portuguese team that did sting, and you could see it stung because guys like Daragh were just so much there to try and beat up on and do as much damage to the Netherlands as they possibly could, and 72-10, that's pretty damaging. That's good show.
The Netherlands kept it interesting for about 15 minutes.
Maybe so.
Georgians had a try chalked off, and then the Dutch went down the field, and they got maybe 10-3 at one point. I thought that actually the opening score, Tabit Sanzes, was arguably the pick of them with a little kick on from Kamaladze and the speed to go after it and take it. But I mean, what I liked is that they had just the physical advantage all over the place. Like they were strong.
1v1 matchups.
Yeah, they were stronger than them. They were quicker than them. Yeah. They were
smarter
in their rugby knowledge, more skillful. Like this is as mismatched a mismatch as ever was to miss a match.
Yes,
this
indeed.
was
If you were to miss a match, this mismatch was the match you'd miss.
Indeed, like it was brutal. I mean, I think the Japradza I think is the name of the tight head who scored. Like his try was Japaridza, that's it. Yeah. His try was hilarious. Like he just caught the ball and he was trucking it up, and then he was trucking it through one, through
I guess
two,
I'll keep going,
through three,
and
all over the line, trucked the big tight head, and it was like grand stuff. But I mean, that was a microcosm of what this game was. But credit Georgia for running up an absolutely monstrous
72 points is really encouraging for Georgia's point of view, because it's exactly what they're trying to build is the offensive side.
Lobson-Idza scoring 2 tries was definitely had the bit between his teeth, because he was benched for Apersidza and then not even trusted to come on and make a in that game against Portugal, because Apersidza was playing so well. But to be fair to him, he had a great game in this. He drove great tempo, sniped well.
2 good nines, and I think they're going to have to try and use both and rotate both. But they need to, if they can find an heir apparent to Tato as well, they'll be laughing, then have a bit of depth in the halfback position. But they moved the ball pretty well. They got their offense purring. They managed to run up a really impressive score and do their points differential no harm after the draw that set them back, and all manner of things, as well as their confidence and going to the gap week having scored 72 points. It somewhat settles the ship, even considering the opposition. And actually, the highlight for the opposition, the Netherlands, was their captain Dirk Dannen going in for their only try, and that is his going to be his last game for the national team, Dirk Dannen. So congrats to him.
I wonder why he's quitting mid-tournament.
I don't know, but
fair play to him all the same.
Tip of the cap too, and that was definitely the highlight from a Dutch point of view. The rest was pretty ugly scenes.
It's a low. It's like talking about Italy in the Six Nations. They are trying to do some things. They have this Kiwi core. They have this lad Tay Campbell, who they brought in at fullback, who they want to work with Jordy Hop, and they want to play some razzle dazzle, some quick footy. But they're just these other teams overmatched, trying to make it to a World Cup, and they are not at that level. Not physically, not mentally, not anywhere. They
haven't got exposed to no experience there. They just kept finding themselves cut open left, right, and centre. It's discouraging. You end up under your sticks the whole game, and it's just hopeless.
Snowballed on them. But Georgia were very impressive and are very impressive, and hopefully they get some players back. They had Sutskaridze back for this game. In the back row, remains to be seen whether they can get Saganadze and Beka Gregadze and Niniashvili and Kvesaladze as well, all back for that big game against Romania, and even the big game against Spain as well. Those are 2 games where they want to have their ace players.
Looking at what Portugal fired their warning shot, they know they need to take this comp seriously to try and get the win. These teams
that was the cheap game.
Those
games are over now for Georgia, and so they'll have to go and do what they usually do and grind out the wins. But I still think quality team playing good rugby, very well, much more well-rounded than they ever were.
Yeah, and getting some good, in the absence of guys like that who are missing, obviously it's not ideal to not have all of your starters available, but good minutes, good test minutes for a lot of other guys on the fringe of their squad as well. They really are building quite nicely, both their offence and just their squad depth across the board. So yeah, impressive stuff from the Georgians. A comprehensive showing out in Amsterdam for sure.
No question. But then we moved on. That was very much curtain raising for what was always going to be a just huge game in the context of the World Cup qualification. The winner was going to be in pole position to go and take the Europe 2 spot and an automatic qualification for the World Cup with it.
Yeah.
And it was a fabulous game of rugby.
It really was.
Deservedly won by a very, very good Romania side, coached by Andy Robinson, that are patient, physical, smart, and composed at all times. They were brilliant in this game. They made mistakes. They made sloppy mistakes that let Portugal in, but they never let it get to them.
No.
And in the end,
heads
their
never
power
dropped,
game
and they scored a pivotal try even before the half, even out in a half that Portugal had owned. That really kept them in touch and distance. That was so key. And then scoring clutch try at the tail end to kind of push it out beyond that bonus point, to have that macro awareness of tournament standings, and every point counts, even if it's not a point scored, a point deprived to Portugal. Very, very useful too. Really good stuff from the Oaks in this one, and great stuff from Portugal. They still score points, they still manage to rattle up points even away from home and up against it. They're a great side to watch.
It was cheap points, really. That was what was curious about the game. Was actually it started for a game that finished 37-27. It started with defences on top. Both sides had made good adjustments, good reads on each other, and it started with all defence. And Romania had done some great work stuffing what Portugal were doing. And then until McAvee comes up with just an absolutely catastrophic play where he tries a pick and go near his own goal line, bounces it off the guy in the ruck's leg and presents it to Marques, of all people, just sees the ball fly into his hands. It's like, oh well, try. Yeah. And Jose Lima goes in for the softest of tries. And McAvee actually a couple of seconds later gave away another penalty, which made it 8-3, and he had a rough start to that game. And then Portugal come back. Their best try of the game was probably the next one that involved all those clever little hands and pieces of play from the two Pintos on the edge.
That's right.
That ended up putting Marta in for the score on the right hand side of the pitch, where they managed to flash it across the field.
Yeah, just classic Portugal going through the hands, working the numbers and being sharp.
That was the only real major piece of offence. The others were cheap. I mean, Romania got back down the end of the pitch towards the end of the half. They were 15-3 down at this stage after giving up those pretty cheap scores. One good score and a few cheap scores. I mean, the first one could have been a penalty try and then ended up from the maul, and then ended up being great that Portugal flashed it to the end and got in. That try, there's no arguments. But then the other two were a bit cheap. They come back up the pitch, kick a dubious enough goal to go 15-6 down, and then it dubious becomes catastrophic when off the restart. And geez, what a weekend it was for restarts leading straight to tries. But it was Portugal put it on a dime for Vincent Pinto, the right winger, who was brilliant in this game
in today,
just
and in
knocks
the absence
the ball
of
back.
Storty, he stepped up, because what were we going to do without Storty from last year? Pinto steps in and does great stuff.
Exactly, wins the ball in the air, gets back on his feet, and then is there to claim the pass and score another very, very cheap score. And then Romania are thinking you're your worst enemies in phase play. We're shutting them down. We're doing very good things. We're physically on top. But then them just giving them cheap plays. But actually, the response to do that with only about a minute left in the half to come back and score a try. And it was Hinckley via Vasa, who has been such a game breaker for them, who burst through.
He's changed their offense fundamentally, himself and Tamani in the midfield, and even Melinte now at fullback. Just a completely different look to how they started last year's tournament, and they're scoring some lovely scores. He's
the guy who makes the big break. In fact, he does breaks on consecutive phases. He busts through, finds a man, and then picks and goes the next phase, and they get all the way up to the line, then work it very patiently through the phases, and just that's probably the first sequence where you really see the physical difference in the forward pack. And they made it count, probably more than Georgia did. They made it count. They kept it tight down there. Georgia were probably a little, if they were reflecting on their performance against Portugal, they were probably a little quick to flash it wide and play Portugal ball instead of just like hang
trucking
on,
it up
let's
and
play a
try
little
and-
slower and see if these guys can stop us playing the slow game, because they struggled then, Portugal, to contain the slow physical game.
It is tough.
And it was Daragh Sayre who crashed over for
see
the
it.
score.
You could see it in the second half, especially then. That try obviously is so important to get back into the game. But then as the second half rolled on, and you could see that Portugal are wearing like 2 weeks on the road away in Tbilisi last week. Famous draw, but you know they worked hard for it, and their first choice 10, Portela, took a knock, went off, didn't feature in this game. You could see them, their
By the
whole
way,
pack wearing dents.
Abacassis, I think is the name of the 10 who came in, had a really bad game.
He did.
He just had an awful game.
This
He wasn't able to get the offense running.
It ended
at
up
all.
being Pinto from fullback who was kind of stepping into that role, and then sent Marques towards
like,
the
even towards the end of his performance, he was just dropping balls cold.
Yeah.
Like he just was lost out there, and that's probably something that we hadn't discussed much about Portugal, but is obviously a factor when you get a new exciting team like this. You worry about depth.
You do,
and that is
10 took a knock into Tbilisi, which is going to happen. Wasn't available
What
for Bucharest the week after, and it was a different.
To be honest,
look.
like asked and answered. The answer is if Portela's out, Marques
plays 10 and you get another halfback in there, because they did that towards the tail end of the first week's game anyway. When Portela went down, it's much better. Marques is the heartbeat of the team. Put him at 10.
Yeah, this dude can't do it, and he couldn't do it, and it was costly because really the offense didn't go, and it was just hustle plays from Marques, and they come up with an intercept.
The intercept was great.
They come up with an intercept, and what a way! Like he hasn't got the outright gash for a man in his 30s. He plucks that ball, makes the read on it from way back, plucks the ball, and then just a perfect.
That's what you want your halfback to be.
I
I think like your halfback should be more excited about a gorgeous assist than a try himself. To be honest,
I feel like Marques is.
He is that lovely left-handed pass, just as he could feel the contact coming over on his shoulder. Just really perfect release. Yeah, they still have all the techers, but Romania with all the heart and all the grit and composure and awareness on the macro scale, to once they were edging the contest, they managed to get the 3-point lead towards the end, but they weren't satisfied with that. They went, and how do you defend a 3-point lead? By going and attacking it and taking the bonus point away from Portugal, which could be very pivotal by the end of the tournament.
Yeah, it was probably the next play that Marques, having just got the intercept, goes again and gets the penalty and the yellow card. And that was a huge moment in the game. Now they were stretched; it was probably going to be a try anyway. But
but they had to do 10 minutes without Marques, which is like losing 2 players. For
it
them,
was
to be honest. Like it means the offense is really struggling then.
Yeah, and that's really the sequence. That's the 10-minute period that saw Romania get control. They only scored once in it, but they
Portugal defended very well and actually scrummaged very well. And some of them were like in terms of depth. Their front row depth has definitely improved over the last year. Some of the guys coming on are big enough to kind of do some jobs there, but they were ultimately outmatched on balance, and you can see that with Romania. They're a big physical unit, and they're a calm unit, at least now. They weren't always, but they are a calm unit now, and Robinson seems to have them all marching to the same tune, and they know and understand where they are in games and how to manage their way through games, and
just how to make their size tell at this level. And that's what they did. Like towards the tail end, after that sequence, they just found it extremely easy to get up the field and then park there. And Portugal were starting to give away penalties and sloppy and fall off tackles. And it was after it went 27-all. That Pinto, the fullback Pinto, had just a drop cold off a long kick, and it was revealing because the body language from the Portuguese
looked
like last year. Just like last year, the last 10 minutes arrived and they had nothing left, and they couldn't hold out, and Romania ended up getting over the line, and then it wasn't a try, and then they took 3 because of course you want the lead in a game like this. But then like
27-all
Portugal,
at that point,
it was 30-27 then with a good few minutes left, and Portugal, for all of their quality, didn't get a shot off, didn't have a moment.
Looked a beaten dog at that point. We knew it was going to be tough, those 2 opening weeks on the road, and you could see it tell in the last 10 minutes of the second game, where they were great in the last 10 minutes of the draw out in Tbilisi. So there's improvement there, but it's tough. They do match up poorly physically against both of those teams, and you're going to play them back to back away from home. You're going to be softened up, and your 10's down. Your talismanic 9 has left the field for 10 minutes as well, and suddenly your fullback's dropping a ball cold, and it's just, you can see the whole team.
It was unraveling from it. And to be honest with you, from a Romanian point of view, like they got in their own way a little bit in this game.
They did. They could maybe have won by more.
The game changed when they stopped getting in their own way. Like they actually matched up pretty well, and what's like obviously the absence of Portela was big,
but then Boulder was missing for Romania as well. So the two starting tens from the week before didn't start this time.
Yeah,
so.
but the defensive matchups that they got, like they really, like, outside of like the one try that Portugal scored on a multi-phase, and it was only like a second phase, was that one where they flashed it right, but it actually came off a very good Portuguese maul.
Yeah.
And the maul defence is the chink in the armour of all of these tier 2 sides.
It is. And that's not limited to Rugby Europe generally.
No,
it seems like it's across the board.
It's
tier
phenomenon.
two defending mauls at tier 2 level, it's difficult.
They're all struggling. So it was off that maul, which was sacked and probably could have been a penalty try anyway, that they were stretched and they conceded. But outside of that, there weren't even a lot of line breaks they conceded. No. And if they ever settled down and got out of their own way, Portugal weren't winning contacts, and Romania were very organised defensively, very impressive.
Very much so.
I'm looking forward to seeing them play Georgia, because
I am too.
I think
they tease up they'll now, from this point, it looks like they've secured Europe too with that one. Obviously, key games against Spain and whatnot upcoming.
Yeah.
But they are in pole position to take that second automatic qualification spot, and being in that position means that they're also in prime position to give a run at winning Rugby Europe for the first time since I think 2015. 2015-16 season, I think, that they won it, and besides that it was Georgia all the way. And it's the old El Clasico is Georgia and Romania in this one, and it's great to see Romania in such a good place going into it. And tip of the hat to all of the players, McAvey captain as well, and the Robinson experiment out here in Tbilisi or in Bucharest really is starting to bear fruit. And when you think even a few years ago we were talking doom and gloom when that new stadium, the lovely new stadium that they are playing in, Arco de Triomphe, it has become their home now, but even that was up in the air for a while. It is kind of coalescing and coming good at the right time for Romania, and I'm expecting to see them at the next World Cup.
Absolutely brilliant. I'm expecting not just to see them, I'm expecting to see them be good. And that's the difference here with these tier 2 teams, and I want to see them play tier 1 teams as soon as possible. They're getting close to Georgia, but the next big game will be that Georgia game for them. So all of that brilliant, really compelling, high scoring, wonderful round 2 action from Rugby Europe has left the table in this position for this year. As it is, Spain, starting with the Netherlands and Russia, have got the position at top of the table, just the 9 points because of the 4-try bonus not being one. It's the 3-try advantage. Romania then in second, 2-0 themselves with the 8 points after successive wins over Russia and Portugal. Still the Netherlands to play for them.
So they can rack up some scores.
In a great position are Romania going forward to compete in this competition. Georgia just behind them on 7 points, back on track with the bonus point win after the draw. Portugal, obviously, that great draw in Tbilisi.
Sort of chopped off. It looks like 2 losing bonus points in the opening 2 rounds.
It does,
but it's not. It was one heroic draw and then one bridge too far out in Bucharest.
But it's brutal. It's brutal that it doesn't count. It doesn't count nearly as much as their quality might suggest on the actual table. Because now things really do get tense. Behind them, Russia just a 1 point from the opening 2 games,
and we're kind of
Netherlands last with none.
Absolutely, and then that obviously is just the picture for this year. But in terms of the World Cup dynamics, this being a 2-parter combined with last year, this is the overall standing in the race for the World Cup. And obviously, just to reiterate, the top 2 get Europe 1 and Europe 2 spots, automatic qualification,
straight to the pools.
Straight to the pools with them if they can secure that. And then third place is where the repechage will be up for grabs, and it'll be a proper knife fight, I think, going down to the final weekend to decide just who's slipping into that repechage place. But at the moment, Romania have put themselves in great position with 22 points, and there's like a game against Holland and the like still to come. So
for those who can't see it, it's Georgia top 31 points, everybody's played 7. Then Romania 22 points, so 9 points behind the Georgians. Spain just 1 point back from Romania, 21 in that repechage position as it is. Portugal a further 5 points back with 16 points in 4th position, chasing Spain now. Russia back again, 6 points further back on 10 points, pretty much out of the equation, along with the Dutch on no points, actually mathematically out of the equation.
Yes, the Dutch are not going to a World Cup, but
the next week though we do have Portugal hosting the Netherlands, so that'll be a chance, and like a necessary 5 points. It's win this game, win it by 3 tries, get as many tries as you can humanly manage, get up and ahead of these Dutch, get your 5 points up, and then Spain host Romania, and that's a really interesting game. And I think if you're Portuguese, looking at that table, I think you're probably rooting for Romania just
so
Spain
you can put yourself in the repechage. Yeah, they lost back-to-back to Romania, so you might have to cede that second place belongs to them. But if Spain do manage to do for them, that could do for Portugal's chances.
It'll certainly hurt, but they'll have games against Spain to come. But Spain hosting Romania in, obviously, just even looking at that table, just a colossal game. Yeah. Spain win that, all of a sudden, who knows? They're in the driving seat for the automatic qualification, and we know they have the quality to do that.
True.
And then finally, Georgia will be hosting Russia in Tbilisi with Dick Mira's men trying to get what would be a famous scalp over in Georgia, and Georgia just trying to stay on track. And a good win there for Georgia will push them pretty much out of catching zone, regardless of what happens in the last
Europe
2 rounds.
One always penciled in for Georgia, but they still have to go and get it, and not mathematically there yet because the other teams are hot in their tail.
So we'll be previewing all of those games on next week's show, and you can look forward to catching that. But listen, that kind of does put a neat little bow around Rugby Europe. Just 3 rounds left now before these World Cups are decided, and each round has just gems of games with all kinds of import on them. And so it continues, but quite a dramatic weekend, and congratulations to Romania and to Spain, who started this competition very well as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and subscribe. And hey, if you have an opinion of your own, if you disagree with what we're saying, leave a comment down below. We might just get back to you.